This is some of the things that are going on that we need, the TBN audience to be praying about. God is moving, but you're not getting that on CNN. You're not getting that on MSNBC. You really have to turn to TBN to go, what is really happening? And I think what we're watching now, but it hasn't really been reported, it's not getting noticed in the midst of all this horror of this war, is people are really processing it in Israel like never before.
Do you see a deeper prophetic significance in it, especially considering the prophetic time we're living in right now? God is moving right now in Israel. I said that in the lead-in real quick. God is really moving. God is up to something. Amid all the tragedy and the pain, things are happening. Prophetic things are happening. You have a front row seat. Break it down for us a bit.
Yeah. Well, let's start in a personal way. Our ministry, the Joshua Fund, my wife and I started 18 and a half years ago to do what? To bless Israel and her neighbors in the name of Jesus. Most ministries, even if they have a full biblical view, yes, God loves Israel, He loves the Jewish people, He has a special, unique plan for us, but He also loves the whole world, and He certainly loves the Palestinians and the Lebanese and the Syrians and the Jordanians, the Iraqis and the Egyptians and so forth. All true. But most ministries don't try to do both simultaneously. But that's what God has called us to do. Over the last 18 and a half years, God has given us the mercy to invest $100 million more, actually, than to strengthen the church in the Middle East, in Israel, starting with, and all those Arab countries, humanitarian relief and pastor support and training and so forth. Why? Because He loves the people of the epicenter. Yeah. Now, I don't believe that God sent this horrible October 7th war. This is satanic. Yeah. Satan is trying to rob, kill, and destroy, right? God sovereignly has let it happen, and so we can unpack that over the course of this show. But I will say that one of the things about living in Israel, Lynn and I live in Jerusalem. We're dual U.S. Israeli citizens. Yeah. 2 of our sons have served in the military. But we're also involved in ministry day to day, not just in reporting, but also day to day on the ground with pastors and ministry leaders in the country and with unbelievers. And what we're seeing is more Israelis are talking about God, are talking about the Bible, and even willing to talk about Yeshua, Jesus. Is He, isn't He, than ever in all of modern Israeli history. Like every pastor and ministry leader we talk to, especially those who are on the front lines, either they're on the Gaza border or near it, or they're on the Lebanon border or near it. They're the ones who say, everybody wants to talk about God. Everyone wants to talk about the scriptures. And many, not all, many want to talk about Yeshua. Why do you guys believe in Jesus? Why? We don't, but you do. But now, if you get to the center of the country, sort of the high-tech corridor, Tel Aviv, Haifa, what we would call the Silicon Wadi, right? That's very secular, hyper-secular. Yeah. And there you talk to pastors and ministry leaders, there's less interest in talking about God. But the country and the army, almost everyone in the army is reading Psalms. They're singing. They're singing
before they go
worship
into battle.
songs. Yeah, before they go into battle.
Yeah.
So I think we're in an Amos 9:9 moment in Israel where God said prophetically through the Hebrew prophet Amos, chapter 9, verse 9, I will shake the whole house of Israel among the nations. I don't think Israel's under judgment. I don't think that's why God sovereignly let this happen. But we are being shaken. Why? Because we're a country that's not, most Israelis either don't believe or don't care or have forgotten that God is our shepherd. This is what David, our greatest king, told us, right? The Lord is my shepherd, right? Ezekiel 34. And throughout the scriptures, the idea that God says, you are the sheep of my pasture, you're my sheep, I am your shepherd. And of course, Yeshua, Jesus himself, right? John chapter 10, I am the good shepherd. Now, even if you set that aside for the moment, now we don't, but as Jews, as Israelis, many of them are not ready to talk about that yet. But they've forgotten that God is our shepherd, that Israel's shepherd. And if you forget, or you don't care, or you think God's too mean, or He's incompetent, or He's impotent, or whatever you think, you're like, well, I don't need a shepherd. Oh, okay, that means you've forgotten that there are ravenous wolves lurking throughout the countryside, waiting to attack. And I think what happened on October 7th is we just dropped our guard. Not just at the political and military level, but overall, it was a country that's saying, I don't need a shepherd. There's no shepherd. And somehow thinking that the Middle East had changed and that there are no ravenous wolves trying to devour us. And this was a very painful awakening.
Yeah.
And now everybody's rethinking. Some religious that I talk to, Orthodox, they're like, I don't believe in God anymore, or how could God be there if he let this happen? Right. They're taking no responsibility as a nation. Maybe we let this happen. Maybe God wanted us to protect us. He wants to be our shepherd. We didn't want him to be our shepherd. So you got secular people saying, I want to talk about God. I've never paid attention to God. I've met people from the Nova Music Festival. This one woman said to me, I was a secularist. I didn't care about God. I've never read a psalm. I never picked up the Bible a day in my life. Now I'm reading the Psalms. Now I'm searching. I need God. I need to find him. I don't know how to find him. Wow. So this is some of the things that are going on that we need, the TBN audience to be praying about. God is moving. But you're not getting that on CNN. You're not getting that on MSNBC or the New York Times. You really have to turn to TBN to go, what is really happening? Yeah. God, under the darkness, and there's a lot of darkness, God is moving. The light of Christ, the Messiah, is actually starting to shine. And it's a really interesting time. Challenging, exhausting, but actually kind of exciting.
Yeah, and you're in the middle of it. And the harshest, obviously, Joel, of all wake-up calls, October 7th. But you've been living in Israel for a while. You've been following it for years. Do you sense now a greater openness among the Jewish people and the people in Israel in particular towards Jesus, towards Yeshua, than ever before? Ever before.
That's true of Jews worldwide. We've done a lot of research, and the Joshua Fund has funded a lot of research. And we found that since I was born in 1967, at that time there were only 2,000 Jewish people on planet Earth that believed that Jesus is the Messiah. Wow. Less than 2,000 or fewer. Today, we're at about 1 million. Now, most of those, close to 900,000, are here in the United States. Then you got about 30,000 in Israel, and then Europe and Brazil and other places around the world. But we're at about 1 million right now. Now, when you think of going from 2,000 to 1 million in 57, almost 58 years, wow, that is tremendous growth that even much of the church isn't aware of. Yes. Even Jews for Jesus and Chosen People Ministries and others were shocked when that research began to emerge, because a lot of people didn't believe it. I didn't believe it. I believe that there were many more Jews in the kingdom than most people thought, but Jewish ministries were shocked because they were looking at Messianic congregations in the United States and around the world and thinking, there's not that many.
And how many Jews worldwide, by the way?
So, right. So there's about 15 or 16 million Jews total. So now we're talking about 1 million out of 15 or 16 million. This is the highest number in sheer numbers in 2,000 years. It's the highest percentage of Jews who believe in Jesus as Messiah. When my father came to faith in Jesus as an Orthodox Jew from a Orthodox Jewish background, he came to faith in 1973. He thought he was the first Jew since the Apostle Paul who believed this. He never met a Jew who believed in Jesus. He never heard of a Jew who believed in Jesus. And in 1973, there weren't that many. But now we're at about 1 million. The reason most of the Messianic ministries didn't see it is because most Jews who believe in Jesus don't go to Messianic congregations. They just go to regular Bible churches or evangelical churches of different denominations. And so they sort of blend into the rest of the evangelical culture. They don't distinguish themselves as Hebrew Christians or Messianic per se. Now, in Israel, it's certainly much fewer than in America. Well, why would that be? Well, it's because here in America, there's so many evangelicals who are loving on their neighbors and praying for their neighbors. Jews in America have much more contact with people who love Jesus here than they do in Israel. But that body is growing. In 1948, our research shows that there were only 23 Jewish followers of Jesus, of Yeshua, in Israel in 1948 when the country was prophetically reborn. 23. Now we're at about 30,000 or so. Okay, that's positive, but you're talking about a country of 10 million people. Yeah. Probably 8 million Jews. So you're thinking, well, that's not enough. No, it's not. But the question, so right now you're not seeing in Israel a mass harvest. If you're looking for people coming to faith in Jesus, go to communist China, right? They've gone from 1 million to 100 million. in the last 40 years. Yeah. Or go to Iran, where they had 500 Shia converts to Jesus in 1979. Now they're at several million. Yeah. Brazil, sub-Saharan Africa. These are where the greatest spiritual awakenings are going on. But there is a great spiritual awakening going on among the Jewish people, but most of it's in the States. So the question is, when are we going to start seeing people come to faith in Yeshua in Israel? And I think what we're watching now, but it hasn't really been reported, it's not getting noticed in the midst of all this horror of this war, is people are really processing it in Israel like never before. So that's encouraging. I can't predict when open ears and open hearts will turn to decisions. Yeah. We got to keep praying for that.
Do you see a deeper prophetic meaning behind it? Behind this move of the Jewish people, gradually, it's not all at once, obviously, as you laid out, Joel, but gradually more and more Jews are coming to know Yeshua, Jesus, as their Messiah. Yeah. Do you see a deeper prophetic significance in it, especially considering the prophetic time we're living in right now?
Absolutely. First of all, there's only one country where God says, when the end of the end comes, right before Jesus comes back, I'm going to save that whole nation. That's Israel. Yeah. Romans 11:26. All Israel will be saved. Now, I don't believe that from this moment all the way to the end of the tribulation that every single Jewish person gets saved. I think that is talking about a very specific moment that's connected to Zechariah 12 and to other prophecies that say that God's going to save every single Jew that survives through the tribulation. And just before Jesus comes back, he's going to open up the fount of grace and a blessing that Zechariah speaks of. He's going to pour out his grace on everybody that's left, and he's going to save all of them for his glory, for their good, but not that they've been really listening that much through. But my point is, however a viewer looks at what does Romans 11:26 exactly mean, how do we get to all Israel being saved? Well, 50 years ago, there was almost no Jews saved. So you'd think, well, I don't even know how that's, I mean, maybe that doesn't mean what it says. Maybe that's, I don't know what that means, right? People were like, there have barely been any Jews in all of 2,000 years who got saved since the first century. Yeah. Now that we know that there are 1 million, that is telling us the scales are coming off our eyes. The block of ice around our hearts as Jews is melting, that the curtain of Jewish awakening is going up. And this should encourage us. Yes, we have the rest of the world to reach as well, but Romans 1:16, right? God is really serious about, don't be ashamed. Paul says, I'm not ashamed of the gospel. Why? Because it's the power of God for salvation for everyone who believes. To the Jew first, also for the Gentiles. Unfortunately, too much of Christendom doesn't try to witness to or tell us as Jews about Jesus at all. Roman Catholicism mostly doesn't have any interest in, express any interest in sharing the good news of God's love for or plan of salvation to the Jews. Liberal modern Protestantism doesn't do it, right? A lot of Reformed theology doesn't believe that current Israel has anything to do with biblical prophetic Israel. Doesn't mean they don't have a heart for evangelism, but it's not a priority for most. That's not true of everybody. And then you've got what I would say, I love Christian Zionists. I'm a Christian Zionist. You're a Christian Zionist, meaning we biblically understand that God has a place for Israel and the Jewish people, and it's in Zion, it's in Israel. Mm-hmm. But there is something called, I would call hyper Christian Zionism, which is so focused on giving political support to Israel that some of these leaders will also say, but don't worry, I will never tell a Jewish person about Jesus. Now that's disappointing because the good news is they're standing with Israel. This is a good thing. Yeah. But to say, I'm standing with Israel, but don't worry, I won't share Jesus and the gospel and the good news with God's chosen people. That's not only not good, but I wouldn't want to have that conversation with the Jewish Messiah face to face in heaven one day. Yeah. Don't worry, I stood with your people. But don't worry, I never told them about you or how to get here. There's a flaw, and the flaw is it's a fissure in Romans 1:16 theology. Remember you and I are old enough to remember the Space Shuttle Challenger blowing up. I was in college at that time. And when they tracked, how did this space shuttle, this $1 billion, whatever it was, spaceship blow up? They tracked it down to these little O-rings that were the size of Cheerios. And they had gotten cracked. They'd gotten dried out. They'd gotten cracked. And just a little fissure in a little tiny element of the fitting together of this spaceship, under heat, under pressure, under speed, those fissures failed. Those O-rings, as they were called, failed, and it caused a massive explosion. I believe there are some in Christendom, they may truly love Jesus, but whether they're on, I don't really care about the Jews, or they're on, I totally care about the Jews, but I don't want to risk my relationship with them by talking about God's plan of salvation. There's a fissure somewhere in there. There's a flaw. The flaw is, I am a little ashamed of the gospel. I don't really believe that it's the power of God for salvation for everyone who believes, including the Jews, and I don't want to risk that. That is where some Christian leaders, actually a lot, come out. And what is so tragic about that, Erick, is this season that we're in, the last 50 years, but definitely the last 10, more Jews are open. They see the love of the Christians. Even Christians who aren't sharing with them, they at least feel the love, the affection, the support, the identification. Well, you're not alone in the world. Yeah, the world may hate you. Radical Islam may hate you. Yeah. We don't hate you. We love you. But that's prompting our team, the Jewish team, to say, okay, why? Why do the people who love Jesus, why do you who love Jesus, why do you love us? We need an answer. We have an answer, but we need to be ready to share that answer with everyone who asks.